So I like to group things together as I assess and then group things together. You might be like, doesn't everybody do that? Everyone may do that. But the reason for me doing that allows for me personally to see patterns, right? See patterns and see an ecosystem of opportunities and possibilities are a lot wider.
Hi, I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And I'm Shannon Lucas. We are the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to empowering Catalyst to create bold, powerful change in the world.
This is our podcast, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burnout, where we speak with Catalyst executives about ways to successfully lead transformation in large organizations.
And today I'm thrilled to have time with Yvette Standberry. Welcome, Yvette.
Well, thank you, Shannon. Thanks.
Yvette was inspired by her grandmother running a consignment shop to becoming a business innovation maestro. Her journey is one of passion and perseverance. With 25 plus years of healthcare industry and leadership experience, most recently as head of innovation at Mathematica and senior innovation product lead at Cigna. Now she's launched her own advisory firm. Yvette brings her expertise in digital solutions, transformations, customer experience, and innovation to healthcare. In typical Catalyst style, she solves challenges that improve the world one business at a time by bringing people and ideas together to discover solutions that improve people's lives. And I just have to say that is like the best synopsis of what we do as Catalyst. So thank you for putting that down on paper.
You're welcome. I try. Thank you.
All right, so that's like the sort of kickoff, the taster. I'd love to hear from you about your catalytic journey, maybe a couple of career highlights that you're proud of that would also help us see your catalytic nature.
That's a great question. The thing I'm going to do is not just from a work perspective, it's from a human being perspective, right? Because you're a person first.
Yes.
And I'll give a couple of smatterings between the two. I think the first part of the catalytic journey starts with, how do you think about solving a particular situation that you're in? And when I first started when I graduated from high school, I got into a really good school and I was like, not paying for it. And I was like, wait, what? And so what is called now a gap year, I actually took a year off and I'm like, I'm going to college, right? I worked a couple of jobs. I figured it out and a way of doing that. I got to college. I wanted to go to one of the top business schools in the country, Bentley, got in. That thing got me kind of like, how do you think creatively of solving that particular problem? As I started my career, it started out as being the lead, which I think a lot of younger people have had this situation, being the lead for people who are more experienced and older than you, right? Doing things via paper. What I learned in college was not just the business orientation, but the value of technology to enable having things work better, more efficiently, and giving people space and capacity to learn other things. And through that journey, I was actually able to make a difference in that solution from an operational efficiency perspective. As I look back on my career, and I'll sum it up with this, I can give a couple more ideas, but I look at it like this. Today, we use the word innovation, right? Back then, when I first started my career, innovation has been around for thousands of years, but it hasn't been part of the vernacular, at least in the spaces that I worked in. And when I look at that and all the things I learned, anyone who is an innovation person on this call will be able to appreciate this analogy. If you look at the horizons, the McKinsey horizons, you have horizon 1, 2, and 3. As I look back at my career, horizon 1 around operational efficiency, I spent a lot of time learning, how does an operation work? How does the organization move? How do you make things more efficient and look at them differently and use all the resources? I moved myself up to horizon 2, which got a little bit more into the benefits within the healthcare organization. And it started to get me focused more in clinical solutions. How do you improve care management, care delivery? And when you're thinking about that through both of those, is what is the customer experience or the individual experience? That's a common thread through. When I look at Horizon 3, there's a couple of things. There's just getting to the horizon, which my role at the Mathematica head of innovation, I thought of that. It's like I thought about winning the lottery and I made it to that. That's just to that horizon. After I left Mathematica, where I am right now, Horizon 3. starting my own business, right? And it's all of these things that happen different. I could talk about different jobs, different roles, but at the end of the day, I move through my career through those types of horizons, each time getting bigger, solutions to kind of solve, working with various people, internal and external to the organization. And it's been a great career. I've learned a tremendous amount.
This is fascinating. You've helped me see my own career journey aligned to the horizons. And I'm sitting here wondering, I mean, this isn't really the focus of the podcast per se, but I'm sitting here wondering, like, does every innovation person sort of go on that journey? Because it's not like most people get an innovation job out of school. And so if you have that propensity, that catalytic propensity, it might be like the first place that you're given space to apply the catalytic skills is in some sort of sense of operational efficiency, some kind of incremental improvement. That is fascinating. And I love that your Horizon 3 is like this uncharted territory, which brings me back to a question I had for you about the gap year, because like it's clearly we can see the catalytic stuff in the McKinsey Horizons with you, but like who or how, what sparked you to be like, I'm going to that school, damn it, I'm going to figure this out? Was there someone in your life, or were you just always like the problem solver in your family like that?
No, I think some of it comes from being the oldest. There's just two. I have a brother, and I'm the oldest. We're about a year and a half apart, right? But I am the oldest grandchild on both sides of my parents' family. My mother's side, my father's side, I'm the oldest grandchild. I think that is a big part of it. I think it was the element of, right now, this might sound like kind of anecdotal or typical, but being the first to go to school. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. And I just had that, I don't know, it just came from inside to say, okay, I'm going to do it. I'll figure it out. I'm going to do it. And that happens throughout my career. It happened throughout my career. And I'll give you one more example. And I'm trying to bring that back alive, right? Like, so Shannon, when we first met, I'm like trying to find that spark, because not everyone has the spark. Mine has been dampened. I am reigniting it. Some years ago, I was at an organization. They had a whole layoff, which happens often, right? And so when that happens, I asked the question, well, what are you going to do? You initially panic, right? You're in that hot space of panicking, right? And you're like, I got to get a job. I got to pay for more, whatever your lifestyle is. And at the time, I had that hot spot. And then I took a pause and I said, okay, how am I going to find my next role? I could do the same old, like fill out a resume, go do this, go do that. What did I do instead? I'm like, where can I get the most exposure? A conference. Okay, I'm going to have to pay for that conference. Or am I? So I was able to negotiate with the conference owner to saying, hey, might I be able to go to the conference? And I had a relationship with this person, a working relationship. They said, sure, you can come. You'll have to pay for your lodging, whatever, but sure, you can come. I went with a plan. I'm going to meet X number of people, the whole funneling thinking. And by gosh, I got my next role by meeting with people there at that conference. And that taught me a few things about, like, if you put your mind to it and think and focus just on that, which is similar to what I had to do for work, it can happen. And it sounds corny, but it can happen. And I think the other thing is, my in-person personality, which we have not met, but there's something about, someone said to me, you have the Riz. I was like, all right.
Yeah, you've got a spark even through Zoom, Yvette, that's for sure, since the first time that we talked, which is why we're here today, totally.
So anyway.
I love that about like applying the catalytic skills to really any problem in your life, personal, work, and just unpacking the problem and saying, here's the vision. The vision is I'm going to go to this conference and find a new job, and working backwards and not letting the obstacles stop you. I do want to double click though on it's so interesting because like we run these catalyst programs at large organizations where people, it's different than the high potential programs, because those are usually about people managing up and having the relationships and playing the political games. I mean, not all of them, but but in the catalyst programs, we let people apply. In fact, you can't be voluntold to do it. People have to apply. And what happens every single time is there's a couple of people where the leadership team is like, really? After we do the assessment, the catalyst assessment of the group, they're like, really? That person's a catalyst? And then they stop and they think. So there's this one woman, and the leadership was like, really, she's a catalyst? And then they're like, well, she does run two nonprofits outside of work, and she has written a book, but her spark had gotten dampened at work, is where I wanted to take this back to.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if you have any advice for like how to navigate through, because people often think of us as the shiny catalyst with the Riz, with the sparkle and stuff, but like not every organization lets us bring that in. And so sometimes we can hold that close. How have you
Mm.
navigated that in the past?
It's kind of like you're on a roadway and the road is smooth, and then you enter a road and you're like, ooh, that's dirty, like that's bumpy. Oh, this isn't a road. Oh, I'm back on a road. So as far as from me personally navigating it, I'm much older now, right? But the problem still exists. And part of the challenge is the people, right? Part of and I hate to say it, but it's the people, it's the dynamics of the organization. And quite frankly, some of it is me, right? Like I often say to people, yeah, they weren't ready for the Standberry, right? They weren't ready for the Standberry. But more importantly, beyond that is the role that I was trying to apply. But I would also say one of the other things I did to navigate it, and I would tell this for anyone who is younger than me or currently doing that, is to be curious, not to just say generally, but to be curious about, well, who's who, right? How can you establish some form of a relationship with
Yes.
that person? How
Yes.
do you think about initially your interaction is to take, right? You want to take from others. That's not a bad thing. But how do you start to create a relationship? See the connections within the organization. Have relationships with different types of people. And I don't mean from not just race and gender, those are very, very important. I would also say someone, if you're in a health plan, who's in underwriting, who's in finance, who's in sales, talk to some tech people, talk to some portfolio people, right?
Yeah.
Expand your thinking and start to think about the connections. It doesn't always work because the person, like who I am and how I show up, sometimes does not work for people. And sometimes those people can be in a position of power. So you just have to kind of balance that. And my career grew up in a time which it's a little bit different now, not much, that to being so bold, being a Black woman, right? Female, like, okay, amongst being very of the few, you do get those indirect micro situations that I just have to look above.
Yeah.
That's a part of it too.
How did you manage your energy to keep going in those places where all of your power might not have been always seen or appreciated?
There's something that happens when you get older. You're like, I need a job, so I'll just suck it up, buttercup, and keep yourself moving, right? So it's the suck it up, buttercup, keep yourself moving. But it's also a matter of you thinking through, like, is this the right fit? And sometimes an organization will give you the off ramp. And
Yeah.
at the time when that off ramp happens, whether it was by your choice, their choice, or collectively it wasn't a fit,
Yep.
it will feel like garbage. It will feel very uncomfortable, right?
That's
It's
true.
like,
That's true. We often ask cattle, so how do you know when it's time to leave? But I look back through my career and I'm like, it was pretty damn clear. So
right?
yeah,
And if
that's a
you're
good
in an
one.
organization and you want to stay there, that's when you have to force yourself to have those conversations with other people and kind of pick up on opportunities that might be there. But
Yeah,
I will tell you, it might be you have to choose a choice of the off ramp, or they're choosing it for you, and it will be uncomfortable.
totally. All right. So you've given me little snippets here, but I'd love to hear what it means to you to be a Catalyst executive.
Well, the funny thing is, I thought of myself as a catalyst, but it wasn't until, and this isn't necessarily a plug for you, to seeing that you have an organization. You guys are totally focused on catalysts, people who thrive in like seeing the possibilities and then being in that messiness, right? And it's something to be said about being in that journey, right? Um, and I don't know. I think I probably, from the first job until actually from job one to job two, that's when I start to say, ooh, I kind of like this, right? I kind of like the fact of going in, figuring something out, no matter how gnarly it is, with the journey of learning something new and doing something better. And that really, throughout my career, that has been one of the things. And each point along the way, learning something. It could be self-taught, like I read crazy books. My friends think I'm like some lunatic because I read business books on vacation. I listen to a variety of podcasts, but that's kind of like how I think about it. And it wasn't until again meeting with you and Tracy, I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, that's me, right? That I could actually put a label on it, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I heard that sort of the doing something new and the learning are skills that have supported you on your journey. Are there other attributes of being a catalyst that have helped to make you successful?
Um, so I often say to people when I show up, one, I think out loud. A lot of people don't do that, but I definitely think out loud, which sometimes people, it's scary and it's a little like, wait, what? This it sounds very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, I'm a Sesame Street kid, number one. So I like to group things together as I assess and then group things together. You might be like, doesn't everybody do that? Everyone may do that. But the reason for me doing that allows for me personally to see patterns,
Mm-hmm.
right? See patterns and see an ecosystem of opportunities and possibilities are a lot wider, right? When
Yes.
you have that knowledge. So for me, that's how I think about things. I assess, I categorize, I look for patterns that are out in the world so that then I can see, here are some possibilities.
Amazing. What are some of the challenges then that you've faced as a catalyst leader?
As I said earlier, meeting the Standberry, like some folks aren't ready for the Standberry. But I think personally for me and
What does that mean for you? Can you just unpack that a little bit?
the Standberry,
Yeah.
there are a couple of things about me. When I was younger, working, people are like, do you drink 7 Up? I'm like, no. How many cups of coffee have you had? I don't drink coffee because I come into work with a lot of energy and passion. So when
Yeah.
I say you can't take the Stanberry, to me, it doesn't feel like overabundance because I've come across overabundance. But when I say you can't take the Stanberry, it's the energy, the passion, the thinking well beyond and kind of talking about the possibilities. So that's what I mean about the Stanberry.
Got
And
it.
quite frankly, getting the plain spoken, that's an element of
Mm-hmm.
me that I can be plain spoken, which frankly, when I was younger, I wasn't the kid raise my hand. I was a little bit shy, which my friends find, yeah, okay. But it is asking the questions that nobody wants to ask.
Yes.
So that's what I mean about being the Stanberry, right?
Which is why I see how you relate to the concept of catalyst, because it's like, yes, 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 totally. Okay, so going back to the challenges.
I think some of the challenges um, that I'm realizing now is that an organization, regardless, it is to operate in the present and to continue doing that. When something else new comes in, it's like, ooh, it's very jarring, right? And the that's a bit of a challenge because it's like I just need you to do this thing, right? Hearing I just need you to do this thing, it's like putting you in a box and saying, hey, I'm a horse race at the Saratoga racetrack. I don't want you looking other, I just need you to do this. For someone who's a catalyst, to say I just need you to do this when you can see like there's a better way or that, it is a big challenge, number one. Number two, I would say another challenge is communicating at a level for the right people, right? I have a lot of sayings, and as you can probably tell, and one of the sayings that it's easy to say, but it's hard to do, is that everybody has to pee. And the reason that I say that, because that is the most humanistic thing. However, if you're a catalyst and you want to communicate to an executive or whatever, you might come in with the notion of like, you have to pee too. I have to pee. So can't we just talk like regular human beings? So the communication and the up and down and the variety of the communication, that is a challenge. And I think lastly, one of the challenges that people have is there are a lot fewer catalysts than there are operators. And so as you're traversing the organization, some people truly just want to do their job, right? They just want to do their job.
So let's unpack the last two then, because that's super interesting. Like in the classes, we use like the stakeholder map to figure out who the people are that you have to influence, where you're going to spend your money, but also sort of like what role they play. Operator is a super interesting role. There's not going to be a lot of catalysts on your map potentially. So like, how have you learned to navigate that intersection of there's not a lot of catalysts in the organization, but you have to be able to communicate and meet stakeholders where they are in order to effectively drive change?
Because when you're a catalyst, you inevitably, when you're in conversations or meetings, in large organizations, you're in a number of meetings with more than just a couple of people, it comes out and the other catalysts almost like kind of start to emerge, right? And when you find other catalysts, they have different superpowers, right? And you can learn from their superpowers. And I think that is a big piece. What I would also say, though, is that I think about the empowerment of things, right? So as I move my business forward, and this is something I learned at a recent employer, is that you need to figure out how to empower people and give that. And it's a challenge to empower people that seem to be all over the place when actually you can put structure to it, right? But how do you empower people in different ways to allow them to build their capabilities, their skills, shine and show their strengths and less of their weaknesses?
Totally agree. I'm wondering if you have an example, if you feel comfortable sharing, of a time when you were trying to communicate to a stakeholder and it failed, and then some learnings, and then how you like took that forward and were able to communicate to a stakeholder to get them to lean into change that was successful.
Oh, that's a great question. Ooh, where was that? I would say I'll give two examples. I'll give an example of to where I am right now.
Great.
From previous employers, which I won't name the companies or whatever, there were some tumultuous things. And as I left those organizations, good, bad, or indifferent, I was in a hot spot, right? Like I don't like this, or these people did da 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 da. But when I think back, because now I can reflect back on that, I was like, if that situation didn't happen, I wouldn't be able to think about things X, Y, and Z. If I didn't have the experience of working in a smaller organization, right? And to seeing like in a smaller organization, you have all sorts of things, all sorts of problems. I may not be at this place of I'm going to go on this journey of my own organization, of being an advisor to empower and upskill organizations so that they are sustainable. I don't mean sustainable purely from climate, but sustainable in the long run by giving them the skills, the frameworks, the tools, and working alongside them.
Yeah.
Being a doer for most of my career, which was probably to my detriment, but being a doer for most of my career, I always felt I had to do. And the reality is, Shannon, I didn't always need to do, right? I could lead people, I could work and manage, I could show, but I did not have to be the doer to make the concept come alive.
Oh, it's so tough though, isn't it? You're like, oh, I gotta do it.
It is. It's tough. But what I would say is I learned that, you don't have to, I don't have to do that, right? And everyone in a lot of different things are transition. So how do you transition? Some people are good at that transition. That's why you have people who move into VP or executive roles. That's one of the reasons.
Yeah.
Right? So I would give you that example. And one other earlier example is, I'll never forget this. I came back from a winter vacation and my boss is like, hey, Yvette, I need to talk to you. And I was like, oh boy, am I going to get fired or something? And he said, hey, we need to build out this internet solution, and you seem to be someone who has this propensity for it. Would you lead it? And I remembered, like, prior to that, I had been talking to him. Hey, how about if we, and he was like, no, we got to do this, do this, do this. And somehow it eventually came to being. I just kept talking to him, talking to him, talking to him. So
Nice. It's so great when you feel seen like that. Like I remember those moments too.
yeah,
So just putting a bow on that, the thing I love about the connectivity between these stories is like, as a catalyst, the reminder that we don't have to be the doers, but what we do need to be aware of are the stakeholders across the organization and figuring out how to empower them and bring them along, like find what their leverage points are so that they lean in, like we talked about in the class, like the orchestration, right? Because you're not going to
correct,
be there at the end. You need to hand off the things so you can go do the new thing.
correct,
Totally.
correct.
Love it. All right. Do you have any advice for Catalyst executives outside of maybe what we've talked about today?
For Catalyst executives, I'll speak to, I think, one thing, learn how to be a storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
Which is beyond communication, right? Like, how can you be a storyteller? How do you tell those arcs? How do you show up? But learn to be a storyteller and to turn up, turn down some of those things about you as an individual. And again, Shannon, that's why I'm bringing these thinking and learnings to my own business, right?
How do you navigate that turn up? Like this is live, this is present for me in my life always, but particularly right now. Like, how do you do the turn up, turn down? Like there's a magical ability or power to catalysts.
Yeah.
But you're not wrong, because it's like if we're, creating bad ripples or, literally repulsing people with the energy that we're bringing in, we're not going to get what we want. So like, how do you navigate the turn up and turn down?
I still continue to learn to do that.
Yeah.
Right? I'm still figuring out and learning to do that. And you want to be authentic. Because I think when you're not authentic or true to yourself, it gets a little,
That's it. Totally.
right? And so I have to learn to balance my authenticity, my passion, my drive. But I also have to think it's not about me. And as a matter of fact, I did this little quirky thing. And maybe it's not quirky, but if you've ever seen Ted Lasso, he put up this sign, right? Like to motivate his team. And I literally on my desk right now, masking tape, it says, it's not about you, it's about the customer.
Yep.
It's about the customer. That customer can be you, Shannon. I'm talking to you one-on-one. That customer can be external to your organization. That customer can be someone you're working with internally. It's not about you. And I think as catalysts, sometimes we get so excited about our own thing that we need to shift the conversation to understanding what they need and do. And I think as I look at myself and I've seen other catalysts, you're all about like your idea. It's not that you don't believe in the other, it's like you're so excited you want to get that out, right? But at the end of the day, you have to figure out how to tone yourself down. And it's almost like envisioning every single interaction, and this is an exaggeration, but something to practice for oneself, is to think every single time you are in a discovery. If you're in a discovery conversation, you should talk less and allow the other to talk more.
Spot on. Okay, I want to add sort of one nuance to the thing, because this is again something that I'm still learning, but it's like it was sort of in what you were saying. It's not about you, but that has to start with the catalyst, because we almost make ourselves synonymous with the idea. Like it feels like we're the physical embodiment of the idea. So when they're rejecting the idea, we feel like they're rejecting us. But that's also not on them, that's on us. So getting a little bit of distance between us and our idea is sort of like, I think part of the work that we have to do. But also like, it is really funny because we can get so damn excited about the idea that we're just like, blah, 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 instead of just like, hey, what's going on with you?
Right. Because you might reframe how you're thinking about things. So I would say that, and I would also say use pictures, right? Like the
good one.
is to use pictures. The funny thing, I'm on this journey to launch my business, gotta get customers, and you're on LinkedIn or all these other places, people have all this content. And I'm not opposed to reading, But I think it's more powerful when you have a video. I think it's more powerful when you don't have, because quite frankly, I'm getting a little tired of being honest, of reading LinkedIn posts, and they're too long, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're too long. They're becoming a blog post, and it's
Mm-hmm.
too much. It's overwhelming. And I think there's something to be said about a human being and actually using visuals to communicate how you're thinking about something. And I've done that a lot, and go into conversations where I learned this a long time ago from a boss. Come with a piece of paper so that people can see and like, oh, okay, I get it. Whatever that might be.
I think it actually helps, and I don't know that I've made connected this dot before, but I think it actually helps also with the depersonalizing the idea in both directions. Like we're both pointing at something in the middle instead of
Correct.
me talking and them like rejecting whatever I'm saying. It's like, no, we're co-creating on this piece of paper, the prototype or whatever it is, which
Yeah.
can diffuse it a little bit. Before we get to our last official question, I would love to just have you share with the audience. So like, what are you up to now? I know you have this new exciting thing that you're pursuing. Let's hear about that.
Yeah, so I've decided to have my own consulting business. I am solopreneur, but I don't intend to be that forever. But I decided to have my own consulting business, and from a healthcare perspective, so healthcare oriented. And I'm going to start with innovation, oddly enough. And how do I help organizations commercialize their ideas, their new businesses? You might be like, don't people already do that right now? And I would say my perspective, and I'm viewing this, a lot of organizations focus up on the upfront. I love focusing on the upfront, right? But I believe that there is a problem after you've done the MVP and you looked at it. So then, so what now what, right? I think things
Mm-hmm.
start to falter. And who's addressing that problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you think about it, if innovation is a tactic to helping you grow, you get all excited up front, you get the culture. Who's addressing that particular problem, right?
So true.
So I'm looking to start there. However, I'm also kind of testing what is the market looking for or need? My functional skills, yes, they can go across industries, but I've lived and breathed in the healthcare space. I know how health plans operate. I know how providers operate. I've worked with a number of digital health companies, and I want to give back, right? I want to give back to saying, how can I help an organization achieve their goals, if not surpass them, in a way that empowers them, that I'm not doing it for them, I'm
That's
doing
right.
it with them,
That's
I'm
right.
giving them value, right? And there's some other things I'm toying with, but for now, that's where I'm going to focus. And I believe, I could be wrong, I believe what makes me different than a lot of other consulting companies is that one, I actually worked in an organization. I didn't say, I actually worked in an organization. I'm not saying other consulting gurus haven't, but I've worked, lived, and breathed in large organizations and small organizations. That's number one. Number two, the healthcare aspect of it. And number three, the doing with. It almost becomes like a broker sort of model, right? Because I could envision partnering people with the right people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Based on where they are. So I really believe in empowering. I believe in connections. My company name is Nexio Advisory. You're like, why? Well, that doesn't, and the reason is because I believe in connections of ideas and people. And when I believe in empowering people. And I believe when you can do that, you can have this nexus, this hub that has infinite number of possibilities. Now
Nice.
let's bring that and help other organizations move in that direction. And so
Amazing.
that's that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm thinking about. And I also believe in customer experience, right? Like that just is a running thread through everything.
I hear that because I think, going back, you're like, I could be a customer. Like every interaction, it's like thinking with that lens and bringing the curiosity and the focus on like, what can I make better in that person's life, regardless of like
Correct.
whether they're the buyer
Absolutely.
or not. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for sharing. As we were talking about before we hit record, like even for catalysts who have a positive relationship with change, it isn't always like super comfortable to move into the next thing, but getting comfortable with uncomfortability is amazing. So I can't wait to see where this takes you. So we'll have to check back next year and get an update.
Happy to. Happy to.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to put you on the spot. I just was wondering if you could say a couple words about your experience in the class and how that may be helping you in your catalyst journey.
One, I would say it put a label, like, ooh, it put a classification. Remember, I'm a Sesame Street kid, so I like to categorize things. So one, it put a label on it. Two, it brought to light, like, oh, that's my problem. Or better yet, not my problem. That's an opportunity where I can be better, right? Where it's like, Yvette, stop thinking way out there. You have that. Only give enough. You don't have to only give enough, right? And then give a little bit more and a little bit more. So I'm having to learn this restraint thing, or as a few people have said to me in the last couple of weeks, you need to edit yourself because that's too much. So for me, it was putting a label on it, being around other similar thinkers, but also how to bring people along, because it heightened the fact that I need to be a better storyteller. I need to, it's not about me, it's about the customer. Always, always, always. But write down my vision and figure out how I need to do the steps, because it's not as simple as going to college. It is much more complex. And especially if in a business, and I have grandiose ideas, which I can share with you offline, but I have grandiose ideas. So now I'm like, how do I work backwards to those? Because it's a bit more complex. So I would encourage anyone who has the role of new product development, new innovation, you're building out a new business. You want to build out a new business. You want to create some technology to participate in this environment that you and Tracy have put together, because it gives you a framework and a way to kind of go back. You can't see it, but I have your framework, the map sitting next to me, so I can be like, oh yeah, okay, I remember that.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was amazing. All right, last fun question. Who's your favorite famous catalyst or impactful, past or present, and why?
So, that's a great question. I honestly don't have any one person that I see as a catalyst. And and so here's how I think about people who are catalysts that I get inspired by. Younger people. And I was a younger person, but I'm talking from like small children to even those who are young adults to some younger people who are out there. Why do I think of them as catalysts? Because I'm inspired by that, because they look at things from a totally different point of view, and some people are willing to go and do them, right? They're willing to go and do them, and I was one of them. And I get so excited when I see others who are like, "Ooh, oh, okay, you go." That's one. The second,
That one gave me goosebumps, by the way. That was amazing. I mean, because like, show me a child that doesn't have an imagination. Like,
there
yeah,
are those who
love
have
that.
imagination, and then there are those who have imagination who want to go do, right? Right.
Fair.
There are those who want to go do, and I'll use a prime example. I met an individual today who actually he started a not-for-profit in the local area, and it came to him right out of college. He's like, "Hey, we got to do something." So he and his friends like, "Hey, we got to do something and have this program." This was like probably 12 years ago, and he's still excited about it, right? And it's almost this combination of like, it's a startup but it's a not for profit, and he's done a tremendous amount, and he has so much, like, how do we change, it's like, how do we change the world, right? So that's just an example of like looking at younger people and how they do that. I just am like, I hope I can work with them, because I like to learn, right? But the last thing I would tell you that, as far as like catalyst, I've been thinking about this a bit, and to the point I made earlier about empowering people, I don't have to be the doer. I want to partner with people, because a lot of skills you don't necessarily learn in work, right? Like you honestly don't. It's like, here's the process, is what you do. But I would say, the founder of Montessori. I don't know if you're familiar with Montessori and Montessori School and Learning. I
I
became
am.
familiar.
My son went. Yeah, I love Montessori.
My for those in the audience who don't, my best friend, she has her kids went to Montessori, and at the time I was like, Montessori, what exactly do they do? Right? I went to a private school, but totally different. It was like, wait, what? Huh? Until I visited the classroom, and when I visited that classroom, you have all ages in one classroom. Number one. Number two, you have various things in the room that other people would be like, wait, there's scissors, there's like, but children learn how to use those things. But the biggest thing that I see is that you have this community of different age factors, and everyone is helping that person learn. They're not doing it for them. I mean, clearly little kids, they're going to do, everyone as human beings want to do it, but really they're there to teach one another and help them move forward, right? And so that Montessori learning, I'm bringing it again back into my business. How do you create a community, right? And have them collaborate to create ideas and thinking in a different way of learning, right?
Brilliant. The
So
learning, the doing, learning, the co-learning, like it's, that all ties together. Also with like the people of younger age, it's like the learning by doing the experiential thing, but showing up for one another.
Correct.
Amazing.
Correct. So that's how I think of things. That's why all of the skills that I'm bringing to bear, operational efficiency, digital transformation, innovation, they're all a spin on one another, but they're various skills with, I'll say, people centricity running all the way through. Can you do in a collaborative way?
Amazing. Yvette, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. It was super fun to
I
enjoy
appreciate
some of the Standberry today.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
And to our listeners, thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about how to create bold, powerful change in the world, be sure to check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, or go to our website at catalystconstellations.com.
And you can find me on LinkedIn for now.
We will definitely put that in the show notes, 100%.
And be on LinkedIn, and soon the up and coming Nexio Advisory website.
We will definitely share that too. Also, to our listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, please take 10 seconds to rate it on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Of course, if you have other catalysts in your life, hit the share button and send a link their way. Thanks again.